let's jump right in. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So I'm really excited to chat with you today. We had a little bit of time to prepare prior, but you, even in our preparation, gave such wonderful nuggets of wisdom, and I'm really excited for the viewers here today to hear from you. So let's jump right in. Let's start with a brief background in terms of, how you got into marketing, and then we'll dive into the good stuff.
That sounds great. And I'm really glad to be here. In typical working from home fashion, about 10 minutes ago, my husband was mowing the lawn, my dog was attached to me barking, and we had a power surge.
Oh my gosh.
But everything's fine now, all is stable. So what I thought I would just do is share a little bit about my journey to the role that I have now and work backwards. So I went to University of Texas. Alison,
Hook 'em horns.
Common for those of you that don't know. Hook 'em horns is the cry for the Texas Longhorns, and I majored in communications, and I wanted to stay as far away from finance as possible. I avoided all the classes, all the courses. I ended up getting a job after graduating in Texas at a marketing promotions agency. Really enjoyed that. Shortly afterwards, got laid off. This was the first of 3 different times in my career that I got laid off. Each of those were very, at the moment, tough situations, but really helped me grow as a person and as a marketer. Fast forward, I got out of the industry. I was just candidly looking for a job just a year out of college, trying to get experience. But then I landed back into marketing just a couple years later, indirectly through an investor relations role. And that really helped me to get my foot back into the marketing and communication space. I did that for a couple of years. I did a variety of marketing. I've done supported telemarketing, direct mail, and then my first role really moving into the financial services space was at a firm named Legg Mason. But really the key, I think, for me was just that I would try to find these little holes in my career and opportunities and wedge myself into them, like I did with the investor relations role. I really had no experience in it, but it got me back into the path of communications, which of course led to the marketing. That's
great. And I guess, so you made your leap into the financial sector via Legg Mason. Can you share a little bit about kind of, I know when we chatted before, you really enjoyed marketing, you started to really enjoy the financial sector, but you kind of had an aha moment around wanting to go back to get your master's, but not necessarily getting a master's in marketing. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Right. So I mentioned the role at Legg Mason. I was hired pregnant for a pretty big step up in my career. I will always be incredibly grateful for the man that hired me. I took on that role. Legg Mason, for those of you that don't know, actually just got acquired by another firm, but it's a financial services company. And I began to realize that to have credibility and to have more of an impact, I needed to better understand the industry. And as I started working in financial services, I realized I loved it. So here I was back in college avoiding the classes and that sort of coursework. And so what I began to do was reflect on, okay, I need an MBA. Should I get it in marketing or should I get it in finance? And I chose to get it in finance because I realized I love financial services. I love this space, but I would be more credible as a marketer if I could speak the language and was more fluent. And so I did focus on finance. I worked at Legg Mason for 8 years, and from there I joined T. Rowe Price, where I've been for the last 13 years. And again, for me, it was really about that credibility that I needed. And as many of you know, you really start to gain currency and value when you, in marketing, at least in my view, when you really bring the business step and understanding, as well as the craft of marketing or brand or whatever your area of specialization might be.
Yeah, and so as you've navigated your way through the industry, you've got your MBA in finance, you found yourself at an intersection of being, you know, a strong female marketer, but what I would imagine you found yourself at a table of mostly men. So, you know, with that finance background, I know when we were chatting prior, you really spoke about continuing to build that credibility and really coming to the table with a voice. Can you speak to kind of your passion and vision towards really diving into research and numbers to be able to have that voice?
Sure. So for me, as you mentioned, I was at a table of men and also individuals that were all former financial advisors. So the business that I was a part of was wealth management, financial advisors with clients and offering them advice and building their businesses. And so I was the kind of the make it pretty, the marketer, you know, the brochure wear back then person at the table. And when I would try to chime in and have a voice and offer more at the table, I would find I just would get the stiff arm of like, you don't understand, you aren't a financial advisor. And so I realized I needed another path to create credibility. And so what I started to do was just voraciously read market research. And anything I could get my hands on, third party, within the firm. And I began to bring an objective voice to the table and talk about, yes, I hear what you're saying, but I have some interesting information about what a survey of 10,000 investors said about what they really want from their financial advisor. So how can we square that? Let's talk about that. And what I have found, everyone needs to use their own style, but for me, what I have found is asking questions and eliciting a more meaningful conversation is the way that I drive the conversation forward. And in fact, I have, you know, as I've gotten feedback and here, that's definitely what people have said. You ask the hard questions, and those hard questions advance the conversation. So I just kept building on that. And for me, my brain is wired. If you give me the smallest marketing or brand task or the largest one, I have to think about what is it that our clients are thinking about? What is the competition doing? And what's happening in the environment? And if you think about those three concentric circles, at the intersection of that is brand and marketing strategy. At least that's how I'm wired. And so I just kept building out. When I had a head count, I prioritized the head count to be a market research head count. When I had budget, I would start to do proprietary market research. Whenever I could, I started to bolster my ability to bring insights to the table, but also advance the business, not just my own agenda. And I think that's really been a really key part of how I have been able to have more voice at the table. And I really think it's about credibility and confidence. And the credibility comes with real substance. And for me, yes, it was the marketing craft and brand, you know, expertise that I brought, but the substance of delivering that within the context of real industry insights and business challenges was the credibility. And the confidence came from, you know, putting myself out there. And sometimes I would swing and a miss, but over time you start to get more confident and you start to lean in a little bit more. And that's my formula to having a seat at the table.
Well, it's definitely working. You, your tenure at Rowe is 13 plus years now. And you've had several positions there. And within that span, we pulled a stat from 2009 to 2019. T. Rowe Price has swelled their asset management from 400 billion to 1 trillion. So kudos to you and the greater team and the success you've seen there. So I'd love to pivot and kind of hear more around your growth at T. Rowe and contributing to the company's growth. And then we're going to dive into your specific campaign and kind of talking more about how you've weathered the pandemic by leveraging those research and insights. So first, I just want to touch on a little bit, because it was really interesting to me, someone who's been in a company like T. Rowe for over 13 years, what has kept you there and kept you moving forward and growing?
So for me, there's really two things. I have to always be learning and engaged, and I have to really respect the company and the leaders. So in the first category, investment management it's complex, right? So the firm I work for now, T. Rowe Price, we manage over $1 trillion of investments for individuals that invest through a financial advisor, for people in their 401k, for companies, for countries, both in the US and around the world in over 30 or 40 countries. And so I'm always learning. I'm learning about investing. I'm learning about the markets. I'm learning about cultures. I'm learning about different countries. I'm learning about how countries approach helping people with their retirement goals. It's very different in Australia and Japan than it is in the US. So I'm surrounded by some of the smartest investors in the world. You don't get that growth without having incredibly smart and talented people as investors, which we do at our firm. And so that's really the one side of it. And then the other side of it is that I have to respect the firm and the leaders and feel good about what I'm marketing. And what I like to say about T. Rowe Price is that we do the hard things really well. And what I mean by that is that sometimes I'll say to my team, they'll be frustrated because of technology or getting an email out the door or getting something written and approved or getting buy-in. And I'll say, I get it. I understand that you're frustrated. However, let's take a step back. What are the really hard things? I've been working for 30 years. What are the hard things that companies struggle with? Culture, a culture that is client-centric. That is absolutely the case at our firm. Leaders that you just respect. Like just thinking about that, I got goosebumps thinking about our CEO and like stories that I have of Bill Stromberg, our CEO, and what a good man he is. Their offices are like only this much bigger than mine. Well, when I was in the office, they don't have their own.
They have a sunroom.
Yeah. They don't have their own parking spaces. They don't have their own executive dining room. I could just go on, but I really respect the leaders, and then I also respect the long-term orientation that we have as a firm. So I spent the first 10 years at T. Rowe. I came to T. Rowe from Lake Mason because I wanted more global experience. And I spent the first 10 years building out our global footprint from a marketing standpoint. And during that time, there was, I don't know, maybe 12 or 14 people when I joined. And in the 10 years, we grew to over 70 associates in this marketing team in 7 countries. And what is notable about that is that that business that I was a part of during that time period had 4 or 5 years of what in our industry we call outflows, which is when you're losing more assets under management, that's investment, than you were gaining. There were other parts of the businesses that I was not responsible for that were doing well, and that's of course why the firm continued to grow. But to me, it was just so notable that a long-term orientation like that I would be encouraged and mandated to keep growing, because that was a strategic priority of the firm. So I didn't come onto this to go on and on about the firm. I can't help it. I just kind of go there. But anyway, the reason I've stayed at T. Rowe is really those two reasons.
No, that's really, it's amazing to hear, especially companies so large, that there is still motivation in following really good people and leaders, and it's refreshing to hear that, because I mean, I think we all want to wake up and go to work for a company that we feel passionate about and good about, kind of the vision ahead. So it's inspiring to hear. So let's turn to your current position and your current campaign. So I know you recently launched a campaign kind of called Going Beyond the Numbers. There's a lot of great press about it. I did my research. And in today's new reality, which is not new anymore because we're in mid-October, but pandemic year hits. You've recently, I think a year or two prior, launched this campaign. But now everything's changed literally overnight, and it continues to change overnight. So I'd love to hear more about how you and your team stay at the forefront of marketing and media trends, and how you've had to pivot, what pivots you've made along the way this year against that campaign based on this new reality that we're in, or the old new reality that we're in now.
Sure. So it actually might be helpful to pull up the creative for me to bring this to life. But for all of you brand and marketing people out there, imagine this. You're running a successful campaign, this campaign that I will share with you.
I'm trying to pull it up now.
Yeah, I'll keep talking. It's all good. So in our world, it's important for us to differentiate against what we would call index managers. So you've probably heard in the financial press or other areas that, for individuals, you can choose an index fund, or you can go with a firm like ours. And so we felt like we needed to differentiate that what we do is different than index funds, where they just are passive investors and invest in the marketplace. And so what we did was created a campaign that was grounded in firsthand research. And as you can see on the left, it was all about this idea of what we called strategic investing. And the numbers tell only half of the story. This idea that real people behind the investing decisions and the investing process is what we do really well. And that's what we wanted to bring it to life. And so if you look at the shopping for investment potential in Latin America, that's one of our actual research analysts. And we did all these fun things, right? We did videos where we showed her literally on the ground, going beyond the numbers, doing firsthand research, and finding these incredible insights. And we got great traction, great metrics, as far as engagement. We were able to do really fun things because our industry can be very conservative. We're very highly regulated. So what we did was try to bring these investors and bring them to life. And the way that we did that was, for example, with this analyst, we did what's in your bag. So that was a thing that was happening on Instagram at the time. And so she would literally, break down what was in her bag, right? Some lipstick, but some sensible shoes because she's going to have to walk in factories. And you can see down below, this is one of our mutual funds, but we explain about what we do, or the bottom one was literally, we had analysts that went and followed a delivery, a food service delivery bike rider to see could they really do what they said they were doing. So very compelling, humanized our brand, drove strong movement and likelihood to consider. Those that we measured that were exposed to the advertising indicated that they were more likely to consider than those that were not. Obviously, an important metric to be tracking. Pandemic hits. And here we are, we're trying to deal with, working from home, the transition, our teams, our families, just general freaking out. And, it's after 5, so I'm gonna say it. Oh, crap. I'm after 4. Our creative is totally not relevant in a pandemic. What are we going to do? And we had millions of dollars of investments, media investment out there. And so kudos to the team that I am responsible for. I'm responsible for brand management, market research, media planning, advertising, creative, social, PR, everyone, and we partnered with our business partners, and we all pivoted and said, we need to change our creative. This has to come out. It's just not relevant. And so what we did is we used research. Of course, I would say that, right? And we introduced this, what we called the voice of the market. And we started to, excuse me, we started to be much more intentional about tracking more real time how investors were feeling. We knew that the immediate creative had to be very grounded in empathy and the crisis, and we needed to stay in market, and candidly we had media that we'd already commitments that we had made, and we had to swap out creative. So phase 1 was the crisis empathy phase, which I'll get to the creative in a second, but just to explain. And then the second phase was recovery, because we felt like we needed to make sure that we didn't stay in that empathy crisis phase too long. And so we use this voice of the market to monitor, I'm pulling it up right here, so I have it in front of me, things like social listening, our brand health, third-party research, news stories, all of these things, what our competitors were talking about. And so this comes out now. Don't let the crisis go to waste, right? So we now publish this on a weekly basis, the voice of the market. And so we use that to track how we would approach the creative. So if you want to go to the second part of the slide, we pivoted to a new creative brand platform around guiding investors for 80 years. When everything in your world is upside down, you want stability. When you don't know what's happening and what to make of it, you want people that have been through it before. When you're concerned about what's going to happen and there's so much unknown, you want a firm that you trust. And so that was the basis of the creative pivot. I invited folks on my team to attend this. Those of you that are on, kudos to you. I'm so proud of you for everybody rallied to work with the agency, to change the creative, to change, as all of you know, that's a huge effort. So as you can see here, keeping the focus on the long term, we have questions that you can ask. Ask to Your Price, where our financial planners answer questions. We have, you know, your typical 5 rules for investing during a crisis to get people's attention. Very human, human about the end investor. And what we did was we had actually some pretty low intense sort of messages for the crisis phase. I've showed you more of the creative for the recovery phase. And then we're monitoring when to shift to what we call the new normal, but I heard in another discussion a better term for it, the new abnormal. So I don't know that it will be normal. Who knows? I'm not a futurist. I can't say, but I can say that we need to think about it and that's the creative that we have in the wings and are already leaning into a little bit. And that's really the story there.
And you had mentioned in our earlier chat as well, the 80 years really stuck and resonated now in this crazy world of change, that was really a stable kind of security blanket for the audience now.
It was, and I have to say there was a part of me that thought, well, you know, it might not be the creative that is as exciting, right? But it's the right creative, and that's always what we should do, right? Deliver the right messages at the right time. And so we brought back some really cool, we have like a full-time person on our team that is our brand historian. And we have so much, because we are a brand that is a person. Thomas Rowe Price is the person behind T. Rowe Price. And so we brought back some old, you know, letters that he wrote about thinking about, you know, major disruption, and some really cool artifacts that have brought it to life. And those have been some of our top performing social media posts ever.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing those. I love hearing your story about the pivots, and you know, we lived it ourselves as well at Just, and something we always are striving for is helping brands really find that connection from brand to demand or activation, in that we know, you know, a strong brand to demand framework and strategy is going to drive results. It's going to fill the funnel. It's going to increase awareness to then drive conversions, but there's all sorts of reasons why it doesn't happen. Internal barriers, or the ROI doesn't happen fast enough from brands. So I'd love to hear a little more with this campaign and you know, in general, how you work as the brand lead to really make sure that campaigns like this, to your point, find right place, right time, leveraging data, and really drive that activation.
So we have, we're a single brand. We go to market with a single brand, but we have a very diversified distribution model. I mentioned earlier, you know, somebody with $50,000 in a mutual fund to a country, you know, with billions and billions of dollars, right? And everything in between. So the marketing for those for those individual audiences happens in the business units. And so that's important, because the way that we connect brand to demand is really, I think of it as 2 ways. You've got to start with your brand health and understanding your brand and how it's perceived. I know everyone in this group will understand that and embrace that. On the demand side, it's a lot about the data, like what can be enabled by the data and the technology. And that is not in my purview, but we link those together. And the way that we link those together all the way through in our organization is through what we call our marketing leadership team. And this is a group of all the senior marketing leaders at the firm. I chair the group. We meet weekly. And that's where we create that connectivity. So that's one piece of it. And then I think the other piece is around capability. And one thing that we did this year, even in the midst of the pandemic, was a digital marketing training program with the firm General Assembly, and we extended it as a pilot. We had incredible uptake from those that went through it, because we felt like you've got to have that capability too, right? You can have a strategy, you can have the technology, but it's the people that bring it to value for the firm. And so might not be the answer that you expected, but that's really how we think about it within this, pretty large organization of ours.
Yeah, that's great. I think just that regular cadence, and it sounds like you have all of the right inputs to then, drive decisions looking forward. I know just having a framework across the funnel and all of your different activities is everything, and it's not something a lot of brands are able to put together. So I know we're coming up on just a few more minutes before we jump to Q&A, but I did want to kind of bring back kind of to the research and female focused area. So within your consumer research and brand work, I'd love to hear ways that you have focused on, women's financial habits, financial equity for women, and any advice you have for those of us who are female investors in terms of leveraging some of those insights.
Well, we provide financial planning insights, which I'll share a couple tips, but we also have programs. So I mentioned that we work with financial advisors that use our investment products. And so we have whole programs, because financial advisors are more often men. And so we have whole programs to help them to understand giving advice to women and things to focus on. So we've got, different programs. But what I would like to focus on is just, look, I'm not a financial planner, but I phoned a friend ahead of this discussion. We know that women earn 81 cents on the dollar for compared to men based on census data. There could be different takes on that. But here's what our financial planning team said were the 5 tips. So this is pretty simple, right? Have emergency reserves, 3 to 6 months, because especially in this environment, we all know the unexpected, life shocks, financial shocks, divorce, job loss. Women face more of these gender specific risks, because oftentimes women are the ones that take time off for children, or take the time off to take care of family members. And so that's an important consideration. So have emergency reserves, be well covered in your insurance. Look, in my case, I'm the breadwinner. My husband retired early so that I could focus on my career and he could help with our son. So whatever that looks like in your family, make sure that you understand your family finances. So don't delegate it, right? Like my husband does all the finances, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't know exactly where the money is, what we're doing with it. You should, number 4, get a little investment acumen. There's all kinds of sources and resources that you can use. Within that, know your credit history. And then finally, be creative. For those of you that are younger in your career, be creative on how you mind the gap. And by that, I mean the career gaps that sometimes women or, men take it too, for whatever reasons, parents or children, and think of creative ways to stay relevant. So consulting, contracting. In the UK, they have gap cover, because the maternity leave is a year. So anyway, those are just a couple of tips for all the women, and really, honestly, everyone. Hopefully they're helpful.
Great. Thank you. So last, I wanted to just hear any closing. You just gave some really good advice around investing, but I know I personally took away some tips from you in our previous discussions, and I'd love to hear any final advice you'd like to share just in general around, career and really, finding your way and being a rock star marketer.
Well, I'll leave with two. One is reverse mentoring. And so I have a reverse mentor. And for those of you that are not familiar with it, it involves someone like me, gosh, 8, whatever it was years ago, admitting that I didn't know hardly anything about social media. And I was busy with my son and my life and my career, and it wasn't carving out time. So I reached out to an awesome woman in our organization who does our social media and said, I need help. Will you mentor me? And we still have that relationship. I've learned a lot. Hopefully I've benefited her. I think that's a great way for those of you that are further in your career to work with folks that are often younger, but not always. And for those of you that are younger in your career, might be an angle for you to connect with someone a bit more senior. The other piece of advice I would give is around a piece of advice that I got when I had my very first coaching engagement. And just very quickly, my son was like a year old, and I went into my first chat with the coach, and I said, what do you want to work on? And I said, honestly, I don't know, because I'm just tired. I'm exhausted. I can't bring it. I've got this young child at home, and at this point my husband was still working. And so the person said to me, I think I know why you're tired. And as part of the coaching engagement, there was an assessment. And in the assessment, they looked at what is your natural style and how do you show up at work? And for me, there was a gap. The person that showed up at work was the person I thought I needed to be at that point in my career. So my son's now 20. So this would have been, 19 years ago. And I was trying to be with the men at the table. I was trying to find my way. I was trying to be something I wasn't, and it was exhausting me. Yes, my other duties were tiring too, no doubt. But from that, the coach gave me this advice to relax into your competence. And what that means is to find what you uniquely bring to the table and own it and allow that to be what you lead with and lean in with, because it's not going to take energy, right? If for me, it was the research and the insights angle to marketing. And so I would lean into that, and I would, and that came easier to me, and it wasn't as draining, and it allowed me to be more authentic. And I'll tell you, it took me a couple of years to get to the point where I could do that very naturally and comfortably. But for me, that was a game changer, although the game took a couple of years to finish.
That's great. Thank you so much. Hi, Emily. Do we have time for Q&A, or we need to?
We can definitely bring another question, and if you see one pop up, I just wanted to pop back in here. But yeah, if we see one in there that you wanted to ask, don't let me stop you.
Sure. You game for a couple of questions, Sylvia?
Sure, of course.
Okay. Okay. As leaders, you're always developing your abilities. What skills would you like your marketing team to develop this year?
That's a great question. I would say to really find ways to show up differently in the conversation in your own way, right? Relax into your competence for those in my organization that are listening. We have, as lots of times, especially in more B2B space, you can be in a place where, you're working with sales, they can be very powerful. And so really looking for opportunities to show up and bring your expertise forward in a way that showcases you as an individual and makes you feel empowered and have energy, also delivers value for the business.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's do a couple more. How do you envision technology changing, if at all, to support a new generation of workers who work from home?
I think every day it's changing us. I know if we're talking about the generation of workers, I think we have to get much more adept at collaborating and being creative in a virtual environment. So I know folks in our creative team have unlocked some of the potential of WebEx or Zoom or other tools so that we can do like breakout rooms, and our culture is a very relationship culture, a very collaborative culture. And so, and of course, as marketers, right, we want to be grounded in the business and the realities, but creative thinkers. So I think that is the biggest thing. How do you maintain creativity and collaborate and build relationships and build your career in this environment? And I think we're just beginning to unlock that.
Yeah, definitely. I know we're always looking at, the different ways different teammates like to leverage the technology and just continuing to find those ways to connect virtually. I think we might have time for one more question here. How do you see your audience demographic expanding to be more inclusive as the industry grows and evolves?
Such a good question. That's always the filler that gives you time to think, what a good question. So I would say, I think that we need to reach, every generation thinks about investing in different ways. And I think that look, there is a retirement savings gap around the world. Where people do not have enough money to live comfortably in retirement. And I'm not saying this because it's my job, it is the reality. And so we have to find different ways to connect human to human to help people to understand what is right for them, depending on where they are in their own life and their own ability to invest. We also need to, we have chat bots and we have interactive tools. I think we just need to keep upping our game there too, right? And connecting in very human, creative, interactive ways. We've got emails that are interactive. Like, we've done some pretty innovative things at the firm, but it's only going to get more and more important to find new and creative ways to connect with people, because investing is very personal. It's scary, it's personal, it can be intimidating. So in our industry, it's especially incumbent upon us to tackle that.
Great. Thank you so much, Sylvia. I really enjoyed the discussion, and I hope everyone watching is able to take something. Personally, I took away a bunch of advice from you, and I hope everyone watching was able to take some good wisdom.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you both being here. Sorry for popping in early and rushing you through the Q&A, but Sylvia, I personally loved hearing just about your perseverance through your multiple layoffs throughout the year. I, faced a layoff earlier this year from my previous company due to COVID, and it kind of rocks you, and it's so inspiring to hear just your perseverance and ability to bounce back and obviously succeed so much in your career and continuing to do so. So thank you so much for sharing.
For sure. Happy to do it.
Oh, well, hope to have you both back again, and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.